6 seconds. That's your stopwatch the moment the party crosses the threshold. 6 seconds for the blackguard's fear aura to hit, for the portcullis to guillotine the exit, and a shadow drake to pounce. After that, the cleric's just decorative mist on the altar. If you want your table to feel the same gut drop, stay put. We're walking into the Temple of the Night's Veil, one lethal room at a time, and turning Captain Namatine Veer into the tactician your players will still mutter about years later. Hello adventurers, and welcome back to the Red Quills. It is day 5 of the November map making challenge, the 5th day of consecutive videos, consecutive maps exploring the same world, and today we're doing the Temple of the Night's Veil. Now today's challenge is very simple. Earlier in the series, on day 3, I did the Gates of Night and the Death Knight, Saul Vane. And when I did that, we fleshed out a little bit more of the world. We talked a little bit about mythology, and we gave Saul Vane the Knight a little bit more of a backstory that I thought was quite interesting. We also discussed giving him a following, a cult that worships him, an order of knights to do his bidding called the Knights of Vane. And today, I want to explore those. In the Temple of the Night's Veil, we're going to have the Knights of Vane headquarters. We're going to figure out how to flesh out a cloister of cultists, a temple of priests, and a training ground for the Knights of Vane. So stick around, showcase what you've done if you took the challenge on yesterday, and we will see how we can design this to not only be functional in world, but also be something that provides different kinds of challenges to your players. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with a blank sheet of A4 paper. The thickness isn't particularly important for this because I'm only using Fineliner pens. As always, the list of materials is in the description below, but today I'm only using the thick black, the thin black, and the red today. All of my notes are going to be in a tidy hand, and I'm not going to go overboard. This one is just to give us an indication of how it's going to be set up to make sense and provide some kind of exploration challenge for your players as well. So the Temple of the Night's Veil is on a cliff, some 50 to 100 miles to the southwest of where the Gates of Night are. And through the large windows in the central hall, you can just about make out the crater in which the gate itself stands, a large, ominous, purplish black gem in the middle of a wasteland. And there Saul Vane guards that celestial relic. But this temple is overseen by the head of his order, the head of the Knights of Vane. And for that, I took the Blackguard from Volo's Guide to Monsters because I thought it was particularly interesting. But you can take any number of NPC stat blocks from whatever book you want to. The Veteran, the Spy, the Assassin, all of these are very interesting choices, and each has their own strengths. But what we're talking about today is not particularly matching a lair to a single villain, but trying to create something that makes sense as an organization's headquarters. Now, we've done that previously when we talked about the Thieves Guild headquarters, but today we're going to talk about it in terms of cultists, and I want to base that on historical monastery layouts, on cloisters and abbeys. So if you crack open Volo's Guide to Monsters, the Blackguard gives you 4 gifts on a silver platter, and those are going to be the basis for how we're going to set up some of the combat challenges here, but not necessarily the layout of the complex as a whole. We're going to look at those as a sort of guide for deciding what the cult is built around. The dreadful aspect, the multi-attack with a glaive, a spell list with some smites and some darkness, and a fear and a hatred for divine magic. If we grab those 4 themes, which are fear and darkness, melee pressure, and anti-clerics, and we scribble them on these notes somewhere, we're going to give this place a feeling of individuality. And so that's what we're going to do when we build this one. If you build your own, I would suggest finding a single stat block, finding the leader around which you can build everything else. You could even build it around the Death Knight, the Gates of Night, if you would like. But at this particular point, I thought the Blackguard gave us everything we wanted for this particular site. So this site is built on the edge of a cliff. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure it out so that it only has one entrance and exit, and that is through the courtyard, a portcullis entrance which only opens at midnight and midday. And there the courtyard gives us the first obstacle that we're going to encounter. A portcullis is great. Firstly, because it's the only way in and out, so it means that the players will have to explore in a particular order. They always have to start there. And that means, of course, that courtyard is going to be patrolled. You can set up alarms, you can set up traps, and more than that, you can have natural traps as well. Because this area is their living quarters as well as their, base of operations, you have crops and herbaries in different parts of the gardens on the outside of the complex, and you can have plants like mandrakes or shriekers, which let off a loud noise when intruders come too close to them, and those can serve as natural guards, or you can just have guards themselves on the portcullis. And this is your opportunity just to let the players know that they've been seen, or to give them a challenge of sneaking in. A gatehouse is a classic kill box, so imagine an iron portcullis and give them on either side a couple of murder holes and 4 of the vain guard knights on nightmare steeds that patrol around the exterior of the compound at all times. So the murder hole is just to hold off the party while they're trapped in the portcullis itself. But the other significant point is the horn that's built into the guardhouse. If the players try to sneak through and they're noticed, and the shrieker or the mandrakes or the horn blown by the guard gives them away, then around comes the patrol on the outside, those knights on horsebacks. And again, we're flavoring this for, Saul Vane and for the Blackguard, so they're on nightmare steeds and they got a bit of dark magic with them. If they do manage to get past the courtyard, they're going to head into the Annex hall. But this is basically the administrative center for the complex. It has the offices, it has the storerooms, it has all of the records. And this doesn't necessarily need to be of particular significance to any of the party members, but it just allows us an idea of what this beating heart is. So there's one central room, which is the hall of worship, and that's where you get all the lore, but this is where you get all the information, all the resources, any spending money that they have, any information about where patrols are, any talk about supply drops or any patrols that are sent out. That's where it all is kept. And so that's the part of this challenge which gives the players the opportunity to do a bit of investigation. Got to think about this in terms of different skill level challenges. The first is stealth, this is investigation. Then we move on to the cell wing. If they're captured, they're taken there, and that's a good way to get them into the base if you want to, but also you can find other prisoners there that give the players a little bit of an opportunity to question people or even be betrayed, which is always extremely fun when you're doing a base. Moving past the cell wing, you get to the herbary and the vegetable patch, and that's important for any population that's living there. We've got to think about this practically. So in addition to having the administration center, we've got the herbary and the gardens, we've got the kitchens, we've got the bunks and the mess. All of the living areas that the cult needs in order to continue its existence and provide some mundane support for the populace, because these are living people, they aren't undead, and every cultist needs to have a solid breakfast, lunch and dinner every single day. And how are they going to provide that? So in addition to supply drops, that's where they grow their vegetables. It's the opportunity for the players to encounter non-hostile NPCs or even the innocent. If the cultists have spouses or children who work the gardens with them there, it can show to them that the cultists aren't all bad people, that they have, rich and varied internal lives of their own. That's a fun way to sprinkle that across. We're going to move further into the building now. I'm going to go to the hall of worship, and that's obviously, if you're talking about any kind of religious order, that's the significant area. In this particular case, it is a massive, towering, domed hall with a lot of stained glass windows and 12 massive pillars on which you can find Saul Vane's deeds etched into the basalt rock. It will have a lot of information for the players about what's happening. You can interrupt a rite or a service here and have all of the priests attack them at once. You could even have some kind of ceremony baked into the floor to keep them in place. I think Force Cage is particularly fun. Or you could bring back some of the themes from the Gates of Night and force them into combat with some of the cultists one by one. They only respond to strength, etc. On the other side of the hall of worship is the meditation yard, the kitchen, the bunk, and the mess. And again, that's less of a combat puzzle, more of the opportunity for them to use stealth, to deal with NPCs, to learn more about the day-to-day operations, and to even investigate where they keep the valuables, where they keep their information. Maybe they've come based on clues that one of them is a spy or a leak, and they want to find out who that is. But overall, the feeling that we've given from the rooms that we've gone through so far is that this is a very functional place. And what we haven't talked about is a nerve center, and that's the fun part here. What I want to do is create a sanctum on the far side of the hall of worship from the entrance, behind a hidden wall. And the clue there is that there's a big stained glass window on that wall, which constantly has sunlight streaming through it. So it scatters down shards of color on the floor, and that can either be lit by the sun or the moon. But the important part here is that it's an illusion. Although it is timed according to when the sun rises and the moon rises and so on and so forth, it doesn't respond to the weather. So if you have them arrive in the rain and there's still sunlight streaming down, that's a clue for them that that is an illusion and there's something behind that wall. So if they go up to that wall and they activate it, they figure out what the riddle is, perhaps they defeat one of the cultists in combat, or they unlock the lore that's hidden in the pillars, then they open the door to the Sanctum. And the Sanctum is where the head of the order, Captain Nemetine Vere, can be found, along with all of his information about the cult and the Knights of Vane. So this is something that I'm designing so that you can come before the Gates of Night and you can lead up to the Death Knight himself, but that is the puzzle that's baked into the area. And with that, we've constructed a complex which is filled with people, but it has a functional process as well as, a stat block based function as well. Each of these rooms has a function for the upkeep of the cult, and while they go through them, it's always important to populate it with patrols and inhabitants, and ask yourself what you can use as you go through the complex that you create as puzzles or traps. In this particular case, the sacred rites or the ceremonies of the cult could very easily turn into traps if they aren't fulfilled, if there's a certain time that they need to be completed by and the party doesn't. Perhaps they accidentally activate what is, supposed to be a sacrifice to Saul Vane, and they must, shed blood or face a spectre in single combat. Perhaps the voice of Saul Vane echoes through the halls to remind the cultists of what they are trying to achieve, which requires a wisdom save every so often. There's a lair action for you. Giving yourself more history about what the cult does and basing it around the stat block of its leader will allow you to give it a lot of flavor and flesh out the world a little bit more. So if you've enjoyed this, if this place interests you, if you can build your own complex using the principles that we discussed here, then hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let me know how you're enjoying this Mapvember challenge so far. Have you watched all of the daily videos? I'm trying to keep up the quality, but let me know what you think in the description below. Obviously, I have new lights and I have new recording equipment, and we're going to update the set as well as we go through. So just, let me know. I love hearing what you guys think, and I love getting all the support from this community. So I know what you've been waiting for, and here we go. The challenge for tomorrow is to create an ancient city. How do you show the history that is in a city simply from the map of it? So tomorrow we are designing God's Eye, the city on the bay in which we can find the actual eye of a dead creator god. How has it evolved over the thousands of years since they clustered around the eye that was buried in the center of the crater? How can you show the many generations of kings and queens and emperors and council members that had changed the landscape of the city? So that's what we're going to do tomorrow. Check out the video as it comes out. But until then, happy mapping, and I'll see you then. Tea time. Time for tea. All right. Just finished this map. Going to do the recording now. I'm looking forward to seeing this wall